Have you ever been so broke that you didn't know where your next meal would come from? Have you ever looked into the eyes of someone you love, your child, and realized you had nothing to give them? This is a story of a man who faced that moment, not once, not twice, but every single day for years. A man who went from sleeping in subway bathrooms to owning a multi-million-dollar business. His name is Charis Grander, and his story might just change yours. It's a cold San Francisco night in the early 1980s. The streets glisten from an earlier rain. Streetlights flicker as the city hums in the distance. Charis sits on a worn wooden park bench, his jacket thin, barely holding back the wind. In his arms, a baby boy, barely a year old, wrapped in a faded blue blanket. Cars pass. People walk by. No one stops. Charis doesn't blame them. They have their own lives, their own problems. But deep inside, a voice whispers, "This is not where your story ends." Soft music shift. Do you know what it feels like to be invisible? To have your life unravel in silence, with no audience, no applause, and no one to rescue you? Charis knew that feeling all too well. But this night, like every night, he told himself one thing: I will not give up. Charis Grander was born in Milwaukee in 1954. His childhood? Not the warm, picture-perfect one you might imagine when you think of success stories. His stepfather was abusive. His mother was a safe place. But life kept pulling them apart. At just 8 years old, Charis saw his stepfather send his mother to jail for trying to protect her children. Imagine being that young and watching your world crumble. Would you trust anyone again? Would you still believe in love and safety? Charis didn't have toys or family vacations. He had fear. And yet, somewhere inside, he carried this quiet spark, a belief that life could be better. As a teenager, he joined the Navy, searching for discipline, for a way out. And for a while it worked. But after leaving the military, Charis found himself drifting, trying job after job, never quite finding his place. By the early 1980s, Charis was in San Francisco. He had a girlfriend, Jackie, and soon a baby boy, Christopher Jr. But reality hit hard. Bills piled up, rent was due, and Chris's job selling medical equipment wasn't enough. Then one day, everything broke. Jackie left. Charis was left with his son and nowhere to live. They slept in shelters when there was space. When there wasn't, they found corners of the city where no one would bother them. One night, they ended up in a subway bathroom. Charis locked the door, sat on the floor, held his son close as footsteps echoed outside. Can you imagine holding your child, pretending it's a fun little camping trip so he won't cry, while inside your heart is shattering? Charis cried that night silently, so his son wouldn't hear. But the next morning, he got up, went to work, and kept going. It happened by chance. Charis saw a man parking a shiny red Ferrari. Charis asked, "What do you do?" The man replied, "I'm a stockbroker." Something clicked. Charis didn't know the first thing about stocks, but he knew this. If someone could go from nothing to that, then maybe he could too. He applied for a training program. It paid nothing, but Charis said yes. Why? Because sometimes the opportunity isn't the money, it's the door it opens. The months ahead were brutal. He worked without pay during the day, hustled to find food and shelter at night. Some days, he went without eating. Some nights, he carried his sleeping son into the office bathroom just to keep him warm. But here's the thing. Charis never missed a day of work, never showed up late, and when the program ended, he was the only trainee offered a job. That moment, that was a shift. From there, Charis climbed, learned, grew, and years later, founded his own brokerage firm. From a homeless father to a millionaire, his story reminds us, it's not about where you start. It's about how far you're willing to go. Before we dive into the victory, let's rewind for a second. You remember Charis, right? The man sleeping in public restrooms, holding his little boy close, trying to protect him from the cold world outside. We left him at a turning point, a chance to prove himself in a prestigious stock brokerage internship, unpaid. Now tell me, if you had nothing in your pockets, not even enough for rent, would you still work for free for 6 months? Most would say no. But Charis saw this internship as his ticket out of the storm. Every morning, he would wake up at dawn in the shelter, or sometimes on a subway bench, and rush to the office. He had no car, no steady home, but he had something most people lose when life crushes them: faith in himself. Do you think success is about talent alone? Or is it about showing up every single day, no matter what life throws at you? Chris believed in the second answer. At the office, he wore his only suit, perfectly pressed at a laundromat the night before. He worked harder than anyone else, cold calling clients, memorizing financial terms late at night, chasing leads that others ignored. And all the while, his little boy Christopher Jr. waited for him at daycare. Chris would pick him up, cook whatever food they could afford, and tell him bedtime stories where they were always the heroes. Even if the real world didn't feel that way yet, weeks turned into months. The other interns had apartments, cars, family support. Chris had none of that. But here's a question: what's heavier, the weight of poverty or the weight of quitting on your dream? Chris decided he'd rather carry the first one. He learned how to save minutes. He never wasted time. He didn't even drink water during work to avoid bathroom breaks. Every phone call was a potential breakthrough. Every no was just one step closer to a yes. Have you ever chased something so hard that the rest of the world seemed to disappear? That was Chris's life now. But life wasn't done testing him. There were days when the daycare closed early, forcing him to run across the city, afraid they might call child services if he was late again. There were nights when he held his son close in his shelter bed, listening to strangers fighting in the dark. Some people break under pressure. Some people turn it into fire. Chris turned it into fuel. The internship was ending. Only 1 out of 20 interns would get the full-time job. Imagine standing there, knowing your entire future depends on a single decision, and knowing that decision is in someone else's hands. What would you do? Would you hope? Would you pray? Or would you prepare for the worst? Chris walked into the final meeting wearing that same suit, the one he had worn all these months. His boss looked at him and said, "Chris, we'd like you to join us." In that moment, the weight of years of struggle, pain, and fear fell off his shoulders. He didn't cry in the room, but the moment he walked out, he broke down. And yes, his little boy was the first person he hugged. After years of nothing, they finally had something: a steady income, a home, a chance at a future. But Chris didn't stop there. He worked his way up year after year until he founded his own brokerage firm, Gardner Rich & Company. The man who once had nothing now had millions. The man who once slept in subway bathrooms was now ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange. And here's the thing: his story wasn't about money. It was about proving that your current situation doesn't define your final destination. So let me ask you, what's your homeless bathroom floor? That place you're stuck in, feeling like there's no way out? And what's your internship? That opportunity that looks impossible, but could change everything if you give it everything you've got? Chris's life reminds us, success isn't an overnight miracle. It's a series of choices to show up, to keep going, to never let go of a vision when no one else sees it. And maybe one day, you'll be the person someone else makes a movie about.